Alright, Celine Haute Parfumerie collection of fragrances. There are 10 in the collection currently. It was launched with 9 and an additional one was launched this year, Rimbaud. So it's a total of 10, and today in this video I'm doing a ranked list of the entire Celine Haute Parfumerie collection of fragrances. If you want to find out what they are and how they're ranked, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today I'm talking about Celine Haute Parfumerie. They launched the fragrances in 2019. I actually got to sample them pretty close to when they first launched in New York State, New York City, at the Celine boutique there. And since then, they've only had one launch, which is Rimbaud, that came out this year. And I think the COVID pandemic had a lot to do with the launch of another fragrance from the house. And also, these are very, very tightly distributed fragrances. There's probably like 4 or 5 doors in the States here where you can go sample them. They're not sold outside of the Celine boutiques, and there's not that many Celine boutiques there. It's unlike Louis Vuitton, where most major cities has a Louis Vuitton boutique, if not the smaller cities. But Celine doesn't have a lot of boutiques here. I think there's 2 in Southern California and 2 in New York City, and maybe 1 more somewhere else. But I've got them all here. I've been using them. I got to sample them, as I said, in 2019. I fell in love with Dom Paris. It's here. I do enjoy Dom Paris a lot. But, you know, I've got this list of my favorites, and which one is the most favorite, and of course, which is my least favorite. You know, they're all great. I have them all. But, of course, when you're putting a rank list together, you're going to feature your favorite at number 1 and your, you know, least favorite from the collection at number, or at the bottom of the collection. Either way, I'll let you know what they are. Before I do, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you still haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. How many of you has sampled the Celine Haute Parfumerie collection fragrances? Let me know, put a comment down. And how many of have you had a difficult time getting access to these fragrances? It is really, really difficult to get access to these fragrances. But if you don't know Celine, Celine is a fashion house under LVMH. They do kind of look Chanel-esque when you look at the bottles, obviously. They have a very Chanel aesthetic to them. Very simplistic, minimalistic. The thing about these fragrances is they have not disclosed the perfumer behind each of the fragrances, which is kind of weird. I don't know why they did that. Probably, I don't know. I don't have a reason why. Sometimes brands do that. Like Loewe Fragrances also does that. They don't, you know, disclose the perfumers. And then one time, Quentin Biche told me that he created 001 Man. So maybe he did one of these too. I don't know, but these are some really, really great smelling fragrances if you haven't sampled them. But the warning I give you is they are subdued experiences. Some a little louder than others, but great smells overall. Let's go ahead and get started at number 10. That is Eau de Californie. Eau de Californie doesn't really remind me, or, you know, I don't think that I'm smelling something related to California when I smell it. But then again, does it really have to? It's just a name that they've dropped on this particular fragrance. I would call Eau de Californie earthy, woody, fresh citrus fragrance with Palo Santo, Bergamot, Orris, Moss, and Patchouli. One thing I did not mention at the beginning of the video, I've mentioned in other videos, Celine fragrances do have a very powdery experience about them, and a lot of the fragrance do use Orris. If you are a fan of Orris Iris, you definitely need to check out this line. But as I said, the warning is they are kind of subdued experiences. But once you get past that, I know some of you love beast mode. I do. But sometimes I do crave some more subtle experiences. I don't have it to have it all, you know, really, really loud. I mostly like beast mode when I'm trying to, you know, have people smell my fragrances. If I'm out and about and I don't really care what people think about my fragrance, that's when I want the people around me to smell me. But when I'm wearing fragrances for myself, it doesn't always have to be beast mode. But this is a great smell. It's just ended up at number 10 after smelling every single fragrance. it was not screaming like, oh man, this is the best smelling fragrance experience to me. It's a great smelling fragrance. It's got this kind of Palo Santo, lightly smoky touch from the Palo Santo. It's mostly fresh and then also mossy. And of course the Orris comes in. It kind of acts like a Chypre style fragrance. Is it though? I'm not 100% sure it is. It's just kind of a unique composition with that Palo Santo note, which is kind of like this holy wood from Southern America. Is it Peru? But yeah, it's featured here as a note, and to me it also kind of reminds me of Vetiver. I don't want to not forget saying that. I don't want to forget not to say that, but yeah, this is kind of Vetiver-like. But try it and see if you like it. Eau de Californie is at number 10. At number 9, some of you might be shocked that this is here, but this I bought early on during the pandemic, but it's just not doing it for me. And I thought when I went to the boutique in 2019 in New York City and I smelled it and I liked it and I wanted it and I love the name. Number 9 is Reptile from Celine. So Reptile, you know, it's a leather fragrance. It's a lightly animalic, but I want a leather fragrance to be with a little more oomph, you know? As a smell, it's great, but I always feel like leather fragrances need to have this robustness, the intensity, because in the end, it's a very masculine kind of a note, really rough and animalic, and I just don't get that here. It's kind of light, but it does smell great. It's a great smelling fragrance. I just wanted that robustness, as I said, that kind of intensity. But this is a woody, mossy, earthy leather fragrance with leather, moss, pepper, musk, and cedar. This particular fragrance also doesn't have the Orris listed as a note, but I feel like Orris is present, or not prominent, but present here, because the overall experience is powdery. A lot of these fragrances will act powdery, and this one definitely does. But it is leathery, and I just wanted a little more intensity. As the smell is great, it is definitely a little better than the Eau de Californie, so it's ranked at number 9. Reptile. Let me know if you've sampled that one and if you enjoy it. Moving on to number 8, it's Cologne Française. Do you guys like this one? This to me is a great green citrusy fragrance, but with a major figgy presence, but a more green figgy presence. The fig leaves, you know, the tree itself and not the fruit. But I would call this a woody, earthy, green, citrusy fragrance with fig tree, Orris, Neroli, moss, and musk. See, the moss has now come up 3 times. There's definitely the presence of a mossiness throughout the collection as well, but not every single fragrance has moss. Most of the fragrances have this Orris powdery iris thing, but these 3 fragrances in the bottom do have a kind of a mossiness about them. So it takes them into a lightly Chypre-like direction, as moss or Oakmoss was used in Chypre fragrances as a base note. But this one to me is a great smelling fig fragrance, and it's got 2 of my favorite trees you know, present here. We've got the orange tree, bitter orange in this case, with a neroli note, and then we've got the fig tree. 2 trees that I really love and appreciate as a great Mediterranean kind of trees. You know, I love these trees, and you know, you consume a lot of products from these trees, and I appreciate them in fragrances a lot. So this is at number 8. I like it. It's green, it's citrusy, it's fresh and floral. Cologne Française at number 8. Moving on to number 7, it's Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Saint-Germain-des-Prés is a fragrance focused on heliotrope. Heliotrope is this purple flower. It adds a very powdery experience to the fragrances. Did I already say that these are powdery? They're powdery from Orris iris, presence in the fragrances, but the Saint-Germain-des-Prés is also powdery from heliotrope with a light almondy presence as well. Heliotrope has this light almond powder touch to the fragrances. But what's unique about this heliotrope fragrance is that it has the contrast of Petitgrain. Going back to that bitter orange tree again, one of my cherished trees. Petitgrain comes off the leaves, well, it's the leaves of the bitter orange tree. So in the contrast of this powdery almondy thing, you got this bitter green earthiness that's in here as well. You also have neroli, and then finally the orris root and vanilla. So it's kind of a nutty, almondy, powdery, vanillic, orangey, citrus floral in citrus green leaves kind of an experience. I really like the combination. I do like heliotrope in fragrances. I've come to love them even more as my journey aged, and I'm appreciating certain notes that I didn't really know about or appreciate in perfumes, and I've come to love heliotrope, but I haven't really experienced the heliotrope fragrance that's kind of contrasted with the kind of the citrus tree as well. So it's kind of a breath of fresh air experience with this particular fragrance. And once again, all the fragrances are a little on the subdued side. Some of you like those kind of subdued fragrances. These would be perfect for you. Or if you wear fragrances for yourself, then I think these would be perfect for you as well. But if you're trying to get the attention of other people, maybe these might not be it for you. But as great smells, I think these do have some really, really great smells. So Saint-Germain-des-Prés, Saint-Germain-des-Prés is at number 7. Trying to do my French pronunciations as great as I can. So at number 6, it's the most recent launch from this house. It's the only launch outside of their initial drop of fragrances in 2019. It's Rimbaud, this one right here. You know, I really like this one. It does remind me of something like Caron, Pour un homme de Caron, or Jersey from Chanel. But it's its own unique thing, that bready kind of note in here. There's I think it's a bready kind of note. I thought there was like a wheat note in here, something wheat-like. It's quite nice in this particular fragrance, but it's the addition of lavender and orris in here, and then the breadiness that kind of makes for a very unique experience. So if you like fragrances like Caron, Pour un homme de Caron, and Jersey from Chanel, and you want that kind of like wheat-like experience, kind of bready, this might be a great change of pace for you. I quite like it in here, and it definitely has a kind of mustiness and breadiness about the particular fragrance, contrasted with the lavender and also the orris note in here. So it's at number 6, and even though it's not much original, I do appreciate this particular fragrance. And also I feel like this one has a little more substance in comparison to a lot of the other subdued kind of experiences with the fragrances. So Rimbaud at number 6 from the house of Celine. So moving on to number 5 is probably the most popular fragrance in this house. I think most people talk about this particular fragrance. It's Night Clubbing. So Night Clubbing also has a similar idea for a fragrance with Maison Crivelli's Iris Mollicon. This I would call powdery vanillic green amber fragrance, and it features vanilla, galbanum, orris, musk, moss, and patchouli. You know, the ideas are the same. They do not smell anything like. Whereas Iris Mollicon also has that leather note, but it is the orris note there with the galbanum note that I think a lot of people think this one might smell like. The idea is basically what it's all about. They don't smell alike unless you're able to like remove the notes and kind of like only focus on the vanilla and the orris and then the galbanum, which is present in both fragrances. But this is a powdery vanilla green amber fragrance with vanilla, galbanum, orris, musk, moss, and patchouli. There's that moss again, and there's the orris. Signature notes for this particular house. I really like this one. I wanted some more substance to it. I like the smell a lot. I just wish it was a little more oomphier. And if I wanted to compare the oomphiness between Night Clubbing and also Iris Mollicon, I would much prefer the oomphiness and the substance and the boldness of Iris Mollicon in comparison to Night Clubbing. I kind of like the fragrance a little more over there with Iris Mollicon in comparison to Night Clubbing. They're both really, really great fragrances, but I like the smell a little more, plus I prefer the performance on that one much more than Night Clubbing. So if you like Night Clubbing, check out Iris Mollicon. They're not identical. The idea is there, but they're going to smell different. Anyway, Night Clubbing at number 5. So at number 4, it's Parade. Now this to me is probably a really oomphy experience. I mean, I'm not saying it's like beast mode or anything, but in comparison to a lot of the other fragrances, this doesn't have that subdued experience. It's not holding back. It is trying to jump out at you. Parade is a great citrus aromatic fragrance, and it's also woody earthy with vetiver, neroli, bergamot, oakmoss, and musk. It smells fantastic. If you like the idea of a citrus aromatic, fresh citruses with the floral notes from the citrus tree, plus you've got the experience of bergamot, so it's juicy, it's citrusy, it's a fresh, invigorating, and kind of sparkling with that kind of grassy vetiver and of course the musk and the oak moss. You're definitely gonna like this one. I think it's a great, great smell. Probably one of the best sparkling citrusy fragrances. It just smells really, really great. I do prefer the other ones a little more. because the other ones are not citrus. But this is definitely ranked pretty high for a citrus. It's Parade at number 4. We've got Cologne Française and also SAINT-GERMAIN-DES-PRES. Those are citruses or kind of fresh fragrances, but I think Parade is amazing. It's amazing. In fact, I did a video on the Homme Paris back in 2019 when I bought that. And I said in that video I was going to buy Parade next, and I did end up buying Parade next. Moving on to number 3, it's La Peau Nu, this one right here. La Peau Nu is a very vegetal experience. It's a very violet and iris fragrance experience, and I almost reversed these. I put Parade at number 3 almost, and La Peau Nu at number 4, but I decided to go with this one. This one is a very kind of makeup-y experience, and one thing I did not say is the creative director with this brand, Hedi Slimane, used to be the creative director, I guess, for Dior. He created the whole Dior Homme experience, and I think he was a creative director for launching Dior Homme as a fragrance. This kind of sort of distantly has a kind of a relation to Dior Homme, more like Dior Homme Intense, because it's very makeup-y with the iris. So maybe this was kind of like his bringing back his creation. I don't know how creatively he was involved with creating Dior Homme while he was at Dior, but kind of sort of in that same ballpark is what I'm trying to say. But La Peau Nu is powdery floral earthy iris fragrance with Orris, rose, rice, bergamot, and vetiver. And I think it's the Orris and rose gives me kind of a makeup thing, but also I feel like there's violet here. Definitely there's like a violet kind of vegetal, Orris vegetal, maybe even Angelica kind of a vegetal quality. In fact, I could even go and say something like carrot seeds, because carrot seeds are sometimes substituted for Orris, and I feel like there's a major vegetal vibe along with the whole makeup-y thing, and then there's that whole violet thing in here and powdery. It's a great scent. La Peau Nu is at number 3. Number 2, it's Black Tie. So I had a hard time deciding which one is going to be at number 1. Is it going to be Black Tie or is it going to be Dans Paris? So now you know Dans Paris is at number 1, the very first fragrance I bought from this house, but Black Tie is really close behind it. The Black Tie and also Dans Paris were both featured in my luxury designer fragrances video from over the weekend. If you missed that video, please go catch that, as I feel like Celine's Black Tie and Dans Paris are definitely 2 really great smelling fragrances. Black Tie I would call powdery vanillic amber woody fragrance with vanilla, orris, cedar, moss, and musk. Musk, moss, and orris, although I think it's mostly about orris, and a lot of fragrances do have moss, and then a lot of the fragrances also have musk. This is a great smelling vanilla fragrance. It's powdery. It's also a little smoky. It's not necessarily syrupy. It's a, you know, it's kind of granular. You can smell the grains, but it's a fine kind of grains, not like choppy and finely kind of ground grains, if that makes sense. But it's quite delicious. It's very, very sweet and vanillic, but not over the top, sugary, tooth-rottingly sweet. There's definitely sweetness there. You experience the powderiness from the orris. This one's not vegetal like the previous fragrance. And also there's lots of woods here in the musk. Absolutely delicious. Black Tie at number 2. And my number 1, I already said what it is. It's Dans Paris, this one right here. So this one, in that video I shot over the weekend of the luxury designer fragrances, I mentioned this is kind of a unique vanilla fragrance, as unique as something like Angelique Noir from Guerlain. The reason I find this to be unique is, in the end, it's a vanilla fragrance, but it's got this, what do you call it, laurel kind of a note. So it's got this kind of a unique contrast to the vanilla, whereas Angelique Noir is contrasted with Angelica root. Here, this is, you know, contrasted with laurel blossom. So Dans Paris is a powdery vanillic sweet gourmand fragrance with vanilla, laurel blossom, musk, coriander, and bergamot. So in the end, it's not your typical vanilla experience because you've got that contrast of that laurel blossom, and then of course the spice of the coriander in here as well. It's got kind of a rubberiness about it that I like. I don't know where that's coming from, but it's sweet and powdery. I feel like there's definitely orris here as well. Not as much, so they've left off crediting orris because there's definitely a powdery experience. whole collection is very, very powdery, and I like that whole contrast with that sweet powdery vanilla with the laurel blossom, kind of a aromatic light greenness to provide to this particular fragrance, along with that spice from the coriander. Coriander has a very beautiful smell. It's here, it's definitely here prominently. I quite like this fragrance, and that's why it's at number 1. So Dans Paris, number 1 favorite Celine Haute Parfumerie collection fragrance. Let me know if you've sampled these fragrances. Let me know if you're curious now. Why is it hard to find these fragrances? They're kind of doing the same thing that they're doing with Louis Vuitton. It's a clothing designer from the 50s, I think. They've had a series of fragrances in the 2000s, and they kind of got away with that, and then they launched the Celine Haute Parfumerie or Parfumerie collection in 2019. I think if you go to Paris, they have a standalone store. From what I hear, it's on the Rue Saint-Honoré. You can go and check out the fragrances, but since there's only 4 or 5 stores in this country, there's only those places you can buy these fragrances. Just like I said with Louis Vuitton, they're very, very exclusive, so the only way you can buy them is go to their boutique and buy them, unless you can find some samples online. Either way, let me know your thoughts on these fragrances. If you had all 10, how would you rank them? Or if you have a few, let me know your rank list. I'd like to find out which your favorites are. I know Night Clubbing gets a lot of love and a lot of hype, but I think Black Tie and Dans Paris are definitely really, really great. But I've got Night Clubbing in the top 5, so Night Clubbing at 5, Parade at 4, La Peau Nue at 3, Black Tie at 2, Dans Paris at 1. What is your top 5? Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching today's video on Celine's Haute Parfumerie collection of fragrances. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video, please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.